start with awareness, because you find the tools which could be readily available, they are not known, and that awareness also lack of the guideline. So there's a number of steps of what is missing in terms of the gap or what's the challenge. But the key part of it, one is the structure alignment in terms of governance. How is the data collected? For what? How frequent? Which tools to use? Data for who and in which terms? HAQA brings a potential capacity building to solve that part of awareness in terms of structured regional training program. I've been fortunate enough to be behind this, and I've been behind the higher education information system for a number of years. So the big part I see is about the awareness and also having the structure of who collects the data and who manage the data in universities, even in ecosystem of higher education. So briefly, that's what I can state as the big challenge, because you have touched the real challenge is about the data collection and data management. But if you open and say how frequent is the data collected, how is data managed, how is data readily shared, is it shareable, what are the standards, what are the taxonomy in terms of harmonizing the data collection. So you find that as, if you allow me to call it, as the key challenge. That's number one. Number two is the common indicators. When we are to collect this data, what are the indicators? If you talk about enrollment, if you talk about graduation, if you talk about staff-student relation, all these things need to have something in common. So I don't know if I could touch what HAQA has done or what is the gap there, but through HAQA, the harmonization of higher education quality assurance, 2 and 3, we started working on data, and we support the adoption on shared concept on different indicators, reporting methods, overall training of institutions and regional. And this worked hand in hand with initiatives which are existing, like Inter-University Council, which takes care of 8 countries in Eastern region. They've been doing the same initiative, and they have finalized actually the guideline for data collection and data management. So you find it's a synergy that adds on existing need, but we are trying to solve that problem of indicator. Another point which is as a challenge and which need to be addressed is about having the benchmark or the comparison. What does where, and when? So if we refer to that, you find there is a need of comparing data practice in the region, not only the East Africa, but East and South, because the same data have this portability. The people who are using the data are not limited by borders. If you get a PhD scholar coming across from Southern Africa to Eastern Africa to do the study, or doing the study across Sub-Saharan Africa, they need to access the same data. So there's a need of creating the data practice, the policy use in terms of structured ways of this data, which data are able to be shared, and these initiatives can be scaled. So on that point of benchmarking the practices is also one of the point I can refer to as the key challenge. You find we don't have the clear comparison and the clear exchange. Last but not least is about linking the data use to the quality assurance and policy guidance. We have different fragmented initiatives, statistics takes place all the time, but it's not clearly harmonized to link the data collected for what, data managed for what, how frequent, and how is it used to inform the policy. So in brief, that's what I could mention in terms of the challenge, or what I see in this region as the gap. On different level, because different countries vary. Remember, when we talk about HAQA, we are talking the whole continent. When we talk about East Africa, we're talking for 8 countries. When we talk for Sub-Saharan Africa, we talk for different blocks. East Africa, SADC, ECOWAS. So all those mix of different blocks have different level of maturity. But I can say systematically, step by step, if this region continue to collaborate, we are going to see a great improvement in terms of harmonizing the higher education quality assurance, and also in terms of data governance at large. Allow me to say that that's broad a bit, but I can outline a number of them. For us to do the data management, actually, we need first to harmonize higher education. because we're talking about the data, and these are data set coming from higher education. So some of the strategies which have been as building block, one is the harmonization of higher education system, where we have the national qualification framework, both in TVET and also in university. This East African Quality Assurance Framework is the building block of whatever data you want to talk about in terms of different progress levels. And that helps us to harmonize the information flow or the progress of the levels. Take, for example, master's student. Whom do you consider as master's student in terms of the number of credits the student have done? Whom do you refer to as postgraduate student? Undergraduate student. Does postgraduate is inclusive of all master's program? Yes. Does it take also the postgraduate certificates? Yes. Including PhD? Yes. So that classification of East African quality assurance mechanism, which did one of the document, which is East African Qualification Framework, is one of the primary key role. Other parts of initiatives which were done is about quality assurance frameworks, where we have to train now the quality assurance team, and that's what we are now having on the big scale in HAQUA in terms of continent. But on our side, what we could stand for and what we could talk about deliberately is about the development of different frameworks and the tools that guide quality assurance. And those frameworks, the beauty of them is that they align different steps of what you refer to in higher education. So quality assurance and accreditation framework are the one which also plays a big role. Because if we talk about higher education data, the big part of the data which is needed by most of stakeholders is actually the qualification, either the qualification to enroll on, or the qualification awarded, or the graduates who are awarded in what. So all these steps of having the qualification framework and quality assurance mechanism in terms of credit accumulation, credit transfers, promotion of the professors, all those ones contribute on what is required to in terms of the journey for data. So I could say that the quality assurance for higher education comes with number of steps, and those steps are the one which plays a vital role in higher education information management system, where now you start managing the information, but which is having the ground. So in terms of what are the steps which were done, we had to have the quality assurance standards, we have to have curriculum developed, you have to have the comparability of the curriculum across the region, and you have to have the qualification framework, which is the one now composing of all items or the details, the data sets that supports the student and staff mobility, the labor, the employment, the graduation, so that you can have the details of understanding who is competing in what. So these are the primary fundamental steps which are done in terms of making a higher education information system robust. Allow me to start by saying we have the strategies of our interest in terms of the region, East African bloc, which we share in common with other blocks. But HAQUA is supporting us in these strategies, starting on the side of the data governance. We are working on these capacity building trainings, which we have to do with East and South SADC, and doing this one, it will help us to build the skills, influence or inform the structures in universities, who governs the data, who shares the data, who approves the data, how frequent the data is used. That's one of the key pillar or the key part I can refer to every that we and as the community and the HAQUA initiative, we are working towards, and it helps us to get a better, allow me to say, a better strategy ahead. Number two will be more of the data harmonization, where we talk about data specifications and standards. By having clear definitions of the standards in terms of consistent across the institutions, we need to understand, because these are common gaps, how is the data referred to, how is it named. We need to have the standard template of this information, which is collected across. So HAQUA initiative joined us, and we are working together in terms of having this done. How we are doing it, the roadmap towards this is more of the capacity building and training, and some of activities, I can say it's on our own, where we have to do the continuous system development, because we still have the gap of the tools. We need to build the capacity, we need to have the personnel in doing this. But HAQUA is supporting us directly in terms of the joint capacity building, both national and institution level, which we are doing in East African countries. HAQUA is supporting us on harmonization of these indicators, as I indicated the challenges. HAQUA is helping us to do the regional and continental benchmark, where we articulate the continental level of the readiness, and that happened actually in the HAQUA 2 and in HAQUA 2. We have the roadmap to higher education data, which shows different gap and different readiness, and we are working towards that in HAQUA 3 to see how we can make it ties in the region effort, where all things come together. And this contributes not only to us, it contributes to the continental level, such as CESA and African Union Data Initiative. So whatever we're doing on East Africa, whatever is aimed for as HAQUA, contribute together to bring one continental data set, which is harmonized and which could be robust. So we are so optimistic that this connection will ensure the regional data work contribute effectively to the continental level, and we work towards the level of better monitoring, policy discussion, and in some different indicators of development. So we are optimistic that this is what is happening. Through HAQUA 3, we also have to look at the data governance tools and putting the structures in place. I think I started with this. I always overemphasize on it. My concern always comes from when the cycle of data, especially for a data set of students, is not clearly understood in the cycle of governance. From prospectus to inquiry to application to admission to registration, all those are steps that requires to be considered in the governance. And this affects all stakeholders actually, from parents, from sponsors, from the private business owners, all of them are affected. So if we don't do a better linkage or linking the data quality and the data in decision making, we are going to cause some crisis. Global I can stand to be corrected, but if the university calendar is not clearly aligned, the business around the university suffer. So there's a need of compulsion and there's a need of better planning. Imagine if a university can decide to take a break of 4 months, zero activity at the university. Imagine the business ecosystem around the university, how it can suffer. So all this life cycle of the data around the student plays a role in the whole ecosystem. So we are working with HAQUA 3 to find how we link the data through the governance tools, but also influence different policies, different decisions, and different timelines. It's paramount, it's important for us, and should be important for anybody else to manage the data. Currently, if you have the correct data, you can be able to do the better prediction. But let us leave first the prediction and go for the real management, daily management in terms of expansion. Africa is growing, is one of the biggest growing country in terms of demography. The population is growing. So if you don't start managing and planning the data, it will be hard for you to take care of the growth and expansion in terms of enrollment requirement. Simple example, if you don't start managing and understanding the data of the students you have from general secondary to enter the tertiary education, you are going to have a big number you have not planned for in terms of the well-being and life and health and all those details. So having that said, the quality of the data will influence the quality of the service people get. And the same to the employers. So the effectiveness of having this data, it will influence the effectiveness of service delivery at the continent and at the region at large. So as East Africa, we find data as the heartbeat of operation because we are looking at the human capital, and having it as a center of the human capital and the population growth we have, data will be that important. Number two, data will help to plan and understand the need of the knowledge in terms of exchange of the knowledge, even the mobility of the qualifications and skills. East Africa is defined as common higher education area, and we have the free movement of labor and free movement of skills. Having that said, there is a need of having the regional integration mobility, and you need this data to be comparable and to help in the policy and decisions, as well as support in terms of human capital and human labor. In terms of what we contribute to the continent and to the global at large, we look forward to have the robust data system that will enable us to have a meaningful and reliable report of where we invest. If we want to invest in a given discipline, there's a need to understand where do you have these resources. So data is equally important to East Africa as important to all parts of the world. And higher education data, it's now a high time that we should put more investment to do it. Actually, here is my common word I say when I talk about higher education data management. Imagine that the doctor who will treat you in the near future, in 10 years, is a student on the table who is now in the class. If you don't plan well and inform them with the right decision, they will give you the wrong opinion. Imagine the lawyer judging your case or your family investment will be the same lawyer. Imagine the pilot who will fly you. So if you don't give the correct information timely, that's what will be the consequence. You end up have a mislead generation. So data is that paramount in terms of any development. Not only East Africa, but it's more important. So HAQUA is not creating the parallel systems currently. It is strengthening the existing national and regional ecosystem, and it translates into policy goal, where the policies are translated into practical capacity building and have shared tools, which we coordinate across East Africa. I've been happy to say that I've been in this actually from inception, and I see the transformation taking place. I think one of the key important things to mention is thinking of collaboration. Collaboration in terms of holistic data management, where we should share the existing resources in terms of standards, in terms of tools, in terms of knowledge, so that we give people a better chance to have information shared timely. Number two is about inclusive and collaboration in terms of implementation. Whatever ideas we have in East Africa are not only isolated to East Africa, they are useful across. They are useful to the Europe, they are useful to Africa. There's a need of having, a critical think tank of higher education data, or education data actually in general, as important as it is in health, so that we can be able to meet the needs of our community. So it's in the same line, we have it freely available. It's in the same line we have developed the data collection and management guideline, which we are targeting to share widely, and we are happy to share the expertise and the input, but also we are looking for feedback of what we could have missed. So on these guidelines, we take in consideration the correction, the management of data, and we go further and suggest in terms of the life cycle, in terms of correction method, and even in terms of the metrics and KPI. So what I could mention here is that if we can have more support, more collaboration to put tools now in presence, which can be done in an open source way, where it can reach a level and be available to people to use, it will be more justice for data in terms of higher education.